Good morning. I'm flattered, actually, because I'm normally a household name because I've been to prison twice and I'm a neo-Nazi. I mean, I'm a household name because someone's read my book on Hilaire Belloc. I mean, you're a cultured company, right? So it's good to be here. I've heard about this particular conference, symposium, for, well, over a year. Last year's one sent, if you like, seismic waves throughout the Catholic world. And I thought, oh, that's just like my alley. I hope one day I'll get invited, and as if by magic, within a few weeks, I got the invitation. Can you hear me, by the way? Do I have to keep it?
When you're speaking into the mic.
Exactly, that's the problem. No mobility. So it's great to be here. So thank you, first of all, Daniel, for inviting me and the team, and thank you for coming. The next thing I want to say really is that I feel as if I've drawn the short straw. On Mardi Gras, I'm going to be giving a talk for the Augustine Institute in Denver on evangelizing through the power of beauty. That's what I do. At least that's what I try to do. Evangelize through the power of beauty. And I'm giving a talk on economics. And it's only a passion for me insofar as it's an accident. It's necessary because of more important things. And last night we heard two talks about what really matters, right? From Bishop Conley and Christopher Check. It's all really about reclaiming the world, reclaiming Christ, reclaiming the world for Christ. That's what it's about. And so economics is really, ultimately, proper economics is about that. So I really feel as if I'm not talking about things I really want to talk about because Christ is first. And this is really a means towards Christ, okay? So you've got the whole 2 days of talks, and you're going to hear about beauty, which is really what this thing is about. And I'm not going to be speaking about beauty, and I feel as if I'm in exile. That's why I'm at home. But it's true that in order to actually live a good, true, and beautiful life, we do have to live in a world of politics. We do have to live in a world of economics, and it's not the first thing, but it's a thing, right? And so we do have to have a cup of coffee in the morning. Yeah, absolutely. So they're not that important, but this is important, but only because of the other thing, all right? So I want to get that perfectly clear. I'm not. Do we need to vote? Yes. Do we need to be involved in politics practically? Yes. Is it what life's about? No. All right? Life's about bigger things, and all encapsulated those two marvelous talks yesterday and what's going to happen afterwards. All right, but that said, in order to live in a community, I don't like the word society, and I don't know what that means. Community, where we actually commune with each other and with God. Right? The two great commandments of Christ: love the Lord our God, which is vertical; love our neighbour, which is horizontal. That is the cross. All right? That's all it's about. How do we live, if you like, in the centre of that cross, so that vertically is Christ, horizontally is our neighbour, and that is a political and economic question. Not even primarily, but it's one of the aspects. So, I've written quite a few books. I'm still flattered that anybody should know that I wrote a book on Belloc, particularly a daughter of someone. I love that. But I normally write about beauty, because that's what my love is. But I did write one book in one of my weaker moments, called Small is Still Beautiful, Economics and Families Matter. Now, if I was a good marketer, everyone told me, hold the book up, we'll go and buy it. Right? Listen, so I also believe in the imagination. I have books on Tolkien and Lewis. Right, here we go. Ready? This book, right, Small is Still Beautiful, Economics and Families Matter. It's on sale at the back there, and it'd be great if you would have bought it. Okay. Small is Still Beautiful. My book is called Small is Still Beautiful because it's a book in 1973 called Small is Beautiful by a German economist called E.F. Schumacher. And he moved to England because of the Nazis in 1930. At that time he was a Marxist. She escaped from the Nazis, moved to England, became a naturalised British subject. He wrote a book called Small is Beautiful. In 1973, became an international bestseller. I think in this country the word is New York Times bestseller, because the New York Times rules the world. But it sold millions of copies. And a book on economics selling millions of copies. It's not usual. Because it was a paradigm shifter. It made people think about things in a new way. And what he was doing was actually making people think about things in the way that Chesterton and Belloc, and indeed, and more importantly, Pope Leo XIII, Pope Pius XI, and subsequently St. John Paul II, writing about the subject of economics. In other words, what he was really doing was just making that which was already established, if you like, the economic teaching of the church, accessible. This is the key word, accessible. Because evangelization is about accessibility. In other words, connecting. We have to be able to connect with the wider world. And he managed to do that. He managed to make these teachings, which are a paper encyclical has to be a paper encyclical. I mean, it has to be precise. Every word has to be. It's not designed to be New York Times bestseller. But what we need is people to take that teaching and do what Schumacher did with it. And my own book is really just a humble endeavour to say, is what he wrote in 1973 relevant for the 21st century? And the answer, of course, is yes, it is. So I'm going to talk about it now for the remainder of my talk. But establish the groundwork, the foundations. Schumacher's book was based, as I just said, on the social teaching of the church. He was very, very smart, by the way, because Lewis and Tolkien, when they were writing their works of literature, I think it was Lewis that said to Tolkien, you have to get by those watchful dragons. In other words, the modern world is so against Christianity that you cannot mention Christianity in anything, because once you do it once, no one's going to listen to you thereafter. So that's about writing The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, The Chronicles of Narnia. It's also about writing a book on economics. So there's a chapter in Schumacher's book called Buddhist Economics. Buddhist Economics. So Buddha is safe, right? No one can feel threatened by Buddha, right? And when Schumacher was an atheist and a Marxist, he went to Burma. He realized that when you change the philosophy or the theology, the important thing, the economics changes. In other words, if your understanding of man, of who we are, changes, economics changes. And he realized that the problem with Western economics in our day and age, it presumes nothing but materialism. All of economics is really an expression of materialism. And if you're a Buddhist, you see economics differently. So when he started to write Small is Still Beautiful, So Small is Beautiful, he thought, well, if I write Catholic economics, no one will buy the book. So he writes Buddhist economics, a chapter, Buddhist economics. Everyone loves that, right? Peace, man, peace. But the point he was making was that economics is not a standalone science, it's not by itself, it's something which is informed by deeper things, an understanding of philosophy and theology. And when he was writing that book, and book sold millions of copies, no one realized this at the time because he was successful. He was involved in a romance with the Catholic Church. The book was published in 1973, and I think, and I could be wrong on this, Schumacher was received that year, the year before. When it was published, he had already become a Catholic very recently. And it wasn't accidental, because he had a friend that he said, about economics, and he's a world-known, but he's internationally known economist. And some said, why have you looked at the teachings of the Catholic Church on these issues? This is a few years earlier. He said, the Catholic Church? It was, and the person said, yeah, the popes. The popes have spoken on economics. And he sort of scoffed, right, snorted, and said, what do and this is actually his own words, what do the popes in their ivory tower know about the real world? And this friend, nonetheless, if you like, impressed upon him, he should read the papal encyclicals. He suggested two in particular. Rerum Novarum by Pope Leo XIII, 1891, and Quadragesimo Anno, Pope Pius XI, 1931. And Schumacher read these encyclicals and was absolutely astonished. He said, the popes know more, in fact not the popes know more, they've answered all the questions. This is where it all is. And this is crucial for Schumacher's conversion. So what I'm going to do for the remainder of the talk is apply Schumacher's words. My book is really an application of Schumacher's words in my own language for the 21st century. It's taught to be the same thing, but Schumacher's own words, of course, are based upon teachings of Leo XIII, Pius XI, and also, not Schumacher didn't know about this, but the church is, God bless the church, the glorious church, continues to live on. So St. John Paul II in Centesimus Annus, an encyclical in 1991, Centesimus Annus, for those of you that are Latin scholars, and I'm not, on the centennial, on the 100th anniversary of Rerum Novarum, St. John Paul II issued his own encyclical, just reiterating the Catholic Church's teaching on these things. And actually, Pope Benedict XVI, who, being very presumptuous, will one day be Saint Benedict. Also, Caritas Veritate, his own encyclical on these issues. Okay, so this is the foundation. In other words, it's not me standing up here and pontificating, right? If I'm pontificating because of the pontiffs. So, although we know that prayer and Christ and living in Christ is much more important than anything politically, economically, we do nonetheless live in a world where economics and politics is an important part of it. So how do we interact with that world? Well, 100 years ago, we talk about the early 20th century, 101 years ago was the Russian Revolution. And really, the whole narrative of the first half of the 20th century was you have a choice. You have to choose. Not between Christ and the world, between God and Caesar. No, you have to choose between communism or capitalism. Take sides. That's what it's all about. And again, as always, the Catholic Church, no, it's not what it's all about. But no one was listening. So you had the Communist Revolution, the Russian Revolution, 1917, really following in the footsteps of the French Revolution in 1789, over 100 centuries before. And you had reactions against that, fascism, in Italy, 1922, and Nazism, 1933. But let's not forget that Nazism is National Socialism. Okay, what these various ideologies had in common was the world. They all worshipped the world and not God. They had much more in common with each other, for all their hatred of each other, than they actually had with us. So the Catholic Church always wanted to be listened to, but in those days it seemed simple. Very simple, it's just a dichotomy. You have to choose, what do you want the world ruled by? Big business or big government? And that was the choice. Now, big capitalism led to bigger business basically running the world. And that's not good, it's not democratic, right? The capitalists have no democratic mandate, no one voted for them, but they run the world. Not good. So the answer to that, said the socialists, was big government. Put everything that has the government will sort everything out on behalf of the people. And the Catholic Church, almost as a lone voice, trying to say they're both stupid options. Right? you don't want the world run by big business, nor do you want the world run by big government. You actually want the world run by ultimately the families, individual families living in accordance with the law of God. No one's listening. But where we are now 100 years on, it's much simpler, actually. Much simpler. Because big business or big government was the old dichotomy. What we have in the 21st century is big business and big government. In other words, they're working together. The socialists and the, I don't like using the word capitalist anymore than I like using the word conservative. But they are basically big business and big government are working together. So the global corporations are working hands with the biggest governments. Small governments don't matter, by the way. In fact, in the modern world, nothing small matters. Those with power are global corporations and the biggest governments, and now the embryonic world government, European Union and other things, right? They work with the global corporations. It's all about how do we carve things up for everyone's benefit. So it's good for business, which means it's good for us. We get rid of all those annoying things, such as individual governments. Because if you're a global corporation, you don't want to deal with petty laws by petty, ridiculous national governments. You want to be able to move your capital and your labour and everybody around the world without anybody getting in your way. Yeah, the smaller the government, the more ridiculous and pathetic it is. Bigger government you take seriously. But then what you do with those people, if you can't actually swallow them, you get in bed with them. Right, and that's the world in which we're living in now. It's the big government and big business are working together. Capitalism, in the old understanding of the word, and socialism are allies. Globalization and the federal government. I don't really want to get into a discussion of Donald Trump. He has thrown things out, Deo gracias. Like the UK Independence Party. I would have said that it's impossible for a small party in the United Kingdom. It's all about conservatives and Labour, socialists and capitalists, if you like. It's one or the other. And then out of nowhere, this new party, which they've just been founded, wins a landslide victory in the European elections. Astonished me. Now, the British people actually had an alternative and they voted for it. Trump, lots of problems with Trump. Not interested in getting involved in right or wrong, but what is important? I always said, I know I'm in a bit of an awkward situation here because I'm the immigrant, right? I'm the Englishman. I'm a US citizen, by the way, so I have the same rights as you now. But you might say, well, that's the problem with the system, right? I always thought that America, actually, for all of its flaunting, all of its sort of, we are what democracy is about. If every country was like America, we'd have a perfect world. What you actually have in this country is a two-party dictatorship, two mechanisms, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and all the big issues, nothing's going to happen. Even Republicans being elected, nothing changed as regards abortion, for instance. Make all the noises to get elected, once they're elected, nothing happens. It was just a mechanism. It stunk. And whatever we think of Donald Trump, I mean, he said it stinks. And everyone said, yeah, it does. Right? Because you have to be a billionaire to play the game. It's like a high-stakes poker game, right? You and I can't be. If you're a billionaire, you can say, I'm going to come to the table. Well, I'm going to play the game with you. And God bless. I mean, the fact that someone broke the mold was necessary. And I hope we don't go back to the same two-party dictatorship, plutocratic. It's not a democracy, it's a plutocracy. Anyway, that's enough of an Englishman preaching to America about your political system. So we need to move beyond that. So the way that the progressives of left and right, that's important, left and right, see the future is ultimately a more globalized world, which means ultimately a more globalized government. It means ultimately a government's a long way from me and you. Ultimately means we have no say whatsoever, which ultimately means democracy is dead. When all the decisions, all the big decisions are made by a big government somewhere, and who cares where it is, because it won't be listening to us anyway. That's globalism, that's globalization. That's the way the world is moving. And both the Democrats and at least a large chunk of Republicans, that's what they believe in. Globalism. Globalization requiring globalism. Global government. And so who runs this? The IMF, International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the United Nations, European Union. And that's the political side. On the economic side, it's the biggest businesses and the biggest banks. So we saw this in the European Union, and I'm very emphatic about fighting the European Union, which is a tyranny. It's big business and big government as bedfellows sleeping together, and the rest of us being trodden asunder. The key thing is we really believe in democracy, and I do. And not, the word democracy is used. We all say it as, it's like, virtue is good. Yeah, democracy is good. Yeah. If democracy means that the people have some sort of input into the sort of world they live in, it's not imposed upon us, we actually get some sort of say, because it impacts us, right? We're part of it. The world we live in is going to be impacted by the politics and economics of the system. Therefore, we should have some sort of say in what sort of system we live in. If that's what democracy means, absolutely, emphatically. We should all be Democrats in that sense. We have to test it by that sense. Because, those of you that have read 1984, doublethink, newspeak, something can be called something and not actually be it. And we've been living in a world now which calls itself democratic, it's not democratic. We did a radical rethink. The word radical, from Latin, means from the roots. We have to look at the roots of things. We have to realize that democracy only works on a small scale. Only works actually on the level of forced God. And the way the Catholic Church's social teaching is based upon two things. Subsidiarity, our freedom to relate to our duty, our responsibility to put ourselves under God. Two great commandments of our Lord. Love the Lord thy God and love our neighbour. And the whole of Catholic social teaching can be summed up in the sign of the cross. Love the Lord thy God. In other words, every single time that Caesar says you can't do something which you have to do because you love the Lord our God, you love Jesus Christ, and you have to obey what our Lord Jesus Christ taught. Every time that Caesar says you can't do that, Caesar is wrong. That's subsidiarity. But solidarity, and these are the two pillars of the Catholic Church's social teaching. Solidarity is the, if you like, the horizontal part of the church, of the cross, which cannot be separated by the vertical. Cannot be separated. You do that, you've got big problems like Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. Is that solidarity means we have to love our neighbour, and they can't be separated. You can't love God without loving your neighbour. It's impossible. And you can't fully and properly love your neighbour without loving God. In fact, if you try to do that, you end up with the Soviet Union, or the French Revolution, all the other ideologies. So true democracy only works on a small scale. In other words, it starts with the family. And it's, if you like, delegated out from the family. So the government has no right to tell the family how it should run its family. Has no right to tell the family how it should educate its children. The family works democratically with a small community. The smallest and most beautiful community is the family itself. Beyond that is the village. I tell you what, I want to say something here just to be controversial. Largely because being controversial is fun. It's enough, it's a good enough reason. Hillary Clinton, God bless her, we love Hillary Clinton. She wrote a book called It Takes a Village. And Rick Santorum wrote a response, It Takes a Family. The problem is, that it takes a village too. A family needs to be part of a village. A family does not live in a desert island. The lie, and it was a lie, that Hillary Clinton was telling, is that she doesn't want a village. She wants a huge, big government that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, that browbeats everybody into an ideological understanding of what reality is. She wants totalitarianism. It's not a village. In essence, the Soviet Union is a village, or a future world government is a village. Now, a village means what a village is. It's a small place of a relatively few families working together. Well, I never been to Fort Scott until 15 hours ago, but it's small and it's away from DC, and they are two blessings. Right? The smaller you are, and the further from DC you are, the healthier you are, right? But this is where democracy should be. And the problem is that in our modern world, the reason most people aren't interested in local government is local governments have been actually deprived of their power. Bit by bit, the federal government has sucked all power like a vampire. So all political power is in DC. It's unhealthy. Really, quite frankly, all your taxes should be paid to your local government. And the politicians that are imposing the taxes, income tax, all some other tax, they know they can't take liberties because you know who they are. You know their name. In fact, you know where they live. Right? That's democracy. And then, of course, Fort Scott might decide, okay, we do need an army. I would suggest, being controversial, much smaller than the one we had, because we don't have to police the world, not our job, right? But we need an army, so yeah, we do have to. Some of the taxpayers' money that we impose at Fort Scott, we will give some of that to the United States government to look after things we can't do ourselves here. And the more you realise this sort of vision of democracy, the more you'll realise we can do most things ourselves here. And actually, quite frankly, defending ourselves. One of the reasons, apart from the mountains, it's an important factor, that Switzerland's never been invaded, even by the Nazis, right? It's mountainous terrain, but everybody in Switzerland's armed. Everyone has a gun, everyone's trained how to use it. Now, why would you want to invade that country? Too much trouble, just go around it, right? In the longer term, by the way, big business, big government is unsustainable. In other words, it cannot be maintained over a long period of time. And one of the problems we have is that we tend to, the big problem we have is that we tend to worship the present. And one of the glorious things about the Catholic Church, it teaches us to see the present in the light of the past and in the light of eternity. And they're two good ways of seeing things. And what the world doesn't see, it treats history with contempt. The past, they're stupid, right? If Winston Churchill didn't know how to use an iPhone, therefore he's more stupid than my 6-year-old, right? Who does? Right? And of course, I think that's dumb. I know Winston Churchill was smarter than my 6-year-old, I have a 10-year-old, right? Then Winston Churchill was smarter than my 10-year-old. But the modern world doesn't think that. Because Winston Churchill didn't know what a smartphone was, didn't know what the internet was. In other words, you treat the past with complete contempt because they were dumb. They didn't have all the gadgets that we have. In my book, Small is Still Beautiful, I actually talk about these things as godgets, right? Godgets, they are gods that we worship. And most of us spend much more time with our godgets than we do with our God. Think about that. So, we have to radically rethink things, that the big business and big government are working towards a global economy and a global politics, ultimately a world government, which is unsustainable in the sense that it cannot last. It takes an understanding of history to make you realise these things cannot last. But for the perspective of the United States, or the United Kingdom, for that matter, you get your wisdom from old wives' tales, fairy tales, history, and anecdotes and proverbs. And there's a saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Globalization actually means, and one thing that Donald Trump tapped into, doesn't mean even putting our eggs in one basket, it actually means putting up all of our eggs in somebody else's basket. I mean, we just export the whole of our manufacturing base to the Pacific Rim. We do that, we don't export it anywhere, we have no say in it, right? Undemocratic. Global corporations realize that they can get people to do the things that American workers do for only 20% what it costs an American worker to do it. Why on earth would they have a manufacturing plant here? Move it to Bangladesh. It's a huge profits to be made. And then the capitalists will say, the big business will say, well, that's fine, but we just have to, we can't do manufacturing in the United States anymore, we have to specialise in service industries. Well, listen, right, if someone has to answer, if my plane to Kansas City to get here, it's a problem. It's actually very real because there was a snow forecast in Chicago and I wouldn't have got here. So I phone up, and to be fair, I actually speak to American somewhere. But you phone these call centres, you speak to an Indian. I want to get from, and this has happened in the past, I want to get from Florida to South Carolina. So I phone a free phone number that gets me through to somewhere in India. Right? And he doesn't even know where Florida and South Carolina are. Right? He has no idea. He's got a computer in front of him on how to get me from there to there. So of course you can move your services as well to there. I mean, no. Only it takes a racist to believe that Indians and Chinese and Africans cannot do what we can do in pretty mundane things, right? Of course, everything. Manufacturing, service industries, and we're just too fat and we cost too much money. Now either we have to learn to live and work for $5 an hour to compete in the global economy, or we just accept that all of the jobs will go over there. And that's fine. What's wrong with jobs going over there? I've got a job, I've got money. What I want is to be able to buy something really cheap that's made in China. Fine, but if you're buying something really cheap that's made in China, that's putting your fellow countrymen out of work. Apart from the ethical aspect of that. 20 years down the line, you'll be out of work, certainly your children will be, and they won't be able to buy, won't be able to afford to buy the cheap imports from China. One of the problems is myopia, right? Short-sightedness. None of us want to think about the ramifications of the choices being made, not by us, by the way, not by us, because we're powerless, for us. Okay. Mahatma Gandhi. It's always safe, by the way, it's always safe. Why is it this doesn't work from one can you hear me? Can't hear me at all, right? Can you hear me now? Mahatma Gandhi, it's back getting past those watchful dragons. You can talk about what the Pope said. As soon as that St. John Paul II says something, every modern person will turn their ears off. Because what does the Pope know? You say Mahatma Gandhi and go like that at the same time. Then you're and Mahatma Gandhi said, the world has enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. Of course, Jesus Christ said that, the church has said that for 2,000 years. Need is something physical. Well, it gets complicated, right? There are physical needs. You can only eat so much, you only need so much. Greed. Now, I'll give you an example. My father, in his earthly wisdom, he said to me when I was about 10. By the way, if you know anything about my past, I've gone to prison twice, rest of it, with a father like mine, you might understand. When I was about 10, I love my dad very much. He's passed on. Please God, he's going on his way to heaven. He said, when you grow up, he said, I'm about 10 years old, he said, if you have a choice between being a drunk and being a gambler, be a drunk. Okay, Dad. I said, why? So that's the choice, why? Well, he said, there's a limit to how much you can drink. There's no limit to how much you can gamble. And that's what the world we're living in, right? There's the limit to our physical needs. There's no limit to our greed. So, no country in the developed world, the United States and also saying, we have enough. As you have the developing world, they're poor, they're starving. We obviously need stuff, right? But none of us are saying, well, you know, we've got enough. I mean, even heaven forbid, we have too much. We always want more. Because greed is a sin. And really if you like, the motif, the motto of the system in which we live is, you don't need the Pope when you've got Mick Jagger. You know that. Saint Mick. Well, he's not Saint Mick, but he's Sir Mick Jagger. God help us, right? Sir Mick Jagger. And he summed it all up for our modern system. I can't get no satisfaction. It's not just negative, it's double negative, which is actually a positive, but he didn't know that. The word satisfaction, is from Latin, satis, which means enough. I can't get enough. That's what we live in. I can't get enough. Now, if you can't get enough, you're not happy. You're not contented, which means having enough. You're in a state of agitation, discontent. That's the world we live in. And how do we cope, by the way, with that? Well, if you don't have enough, there's only one answer, right? Have more. And you still won't have enough, but you have more of stuff that's not enough, right? And so it carries on forever. And of course, there's an absolute connection here, deliberate connection here, with a drug addict. Our modern philosophy is a drug pusher. It's good. When you've got it, you become addicted to it and you want more. And because you want more and you're addicted to it, I'll sell you more. There'll always be more for me. It's always where, if you want it, we can give it to you. We have a system which is basically run by drug addicts, so run by drug pushers for drug addicts. We have to get outside of that. So get rich and be happy. Every single study has shown getting rich doesn't make you happy. It might do it, in a transitory way, like committing adultery, right? You have a few seconds of pleasure, it feels great, you think, hang on a second, there's problems that's associated with this. Right? It's a transitory thing. You get rich, getting rich doesn't make you happy. We live in a society now, as I think it was Bishop Conley yesterday, the statistics. We live in suicide rates, discontent rates, higher than ever. Where you like to find people contemplating suicide? In the United States or Ghana? In the United States. Because we're addicted. We're addicts. When we can't have our addiction satisfied, we despair. You have no hope. You have no hope because you have no God. I want to move on now do a few anecdotes which really, you don't understand politics or economics unless you understand philosophy and theology. What we need is paradox. So Edmund Burke, I remember who it was, one of the speakers yesterday actually quoted Edmund Burke. I think it was Christopher Chen. But Edmund Burke said, liberty itself must be limited in order to be possessed. A profound truth. There is no freedom without sacrifice. Well, freedom is not free, right? That's the other way of putting it. Liberty itself must be limited in order to be possessed. Really, liberty is only possible if we sacrifice ourselves for others. If we refuse to sacrifice for others, we kill others instead. We sacrifice others to ourselves. And if it's one of the people that's been killed by the other, you sacrifice you for them, you're not free. Deeper than that, they're not free either. Lord Acton said, power tends to corrupt. Absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. And yet, live in a world now, certainly amongst the progressives and those that wanted Hillary or what was his name, the other chap, Bernie. So I actually said genuinely forgot for a while. I do generally switch off from this stuff. I've no real idea what's going on. Deliberately. Better things to do, like reading poetry. Then the two talks resonated with me yesterday. Sitting, standing on the deck, watching my ducks and chickens while sipping a glass of bourbon. That's the way I would. That or watching CNN, it's no brainer, right? But power corrupts, and absolute power tends to corrupt. Absolute power tends to corrupt absolutely. We in the world now, they think, well, we just need a big government with the right ideology. Every problem in the world will be solved. That's the socialist agenda. So Hillary, right? We know what the right law is. We impose it. We force everybody to live by it, whatever heaven on earth. And those people say, well, your heaven is our hell. Well, you go to hell, and I'm going to kill you. And that's exactly. We've seen it over and over again, and that was the way the country was leading. Now, when religious sisters are going to be sent to prison for refusing to pay for abortions, that's where we were heading. And thanks be to God, that the country drew back from that so far for a short respite, whatever. Oscar Wilde. I love Oscar Wilde, by the way, because he's a miserable sinner. I love him because he's like me. He said lots of things that are really good, one to others. He said, but God's eternal laws are kind and break the heart of stone. For how else but through a broken heart may Lord Christ enter in. It wasn't part of my talk, but it's just one of the reasons I love Oscar Wilde. He did also said, or at least a character in one of his plays said, a cynic is one who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. That, by the way, is the shortest, this is controversial. There'll be a few of you out there who will be angry with me. Come try to punch me in the nose later. I'll punch me in the nose, I'll try to turn the other cheek. That's what I preach. But this will annoy you, but a cynic is a person who knows the price of everything, the value of nothing, is the most succinct definition of free market economics. That was going to hit me later. Not about price, it's about value. I know the difference between the two. Some things are priceless. Don't try to put a price on them. But G.K. Chesterton, in, I think it was about 1930, G.K. Chesterton gave a talk in the United States. He gave several talks in the United States, and one of the talks he was giving as he toured the States was a talk called civilization and the coming peril. And he began to talk by saying, I suspect you think the coming peril is Bolshevism, communism. And he said, but Bolshevism, communism is not the coming peril. He said, because the best way to destroy a utopia is to try it. It's happening in the Soviet Union. This is very early, 1930, before most people even realised the horrors happening over there. The millions of people put to death. People didn't know that. It was, it's a good country still. The best way to destroy utopia is to try it. That's not the coming peril. He said the coming peril is standardisation by a low standard. Vulgarisation, the dumbing down of things that really matter. So, what do we do about it? Well, easy. Very easy. We just have to become saints. It's not that tough. I decided to become a saint last Monday. I became a saint on Tuesday. You can tell, look, listen, look. That ball spot, right, that's where the halo rubs there. And it rubs there because my head's too big, but I'm working on it, right? Yeah, we have to become holy. We have to actually become like Jesus Christ. That's what the purpose of life is. If we do that, we change everything. But how do we do that? We don't do that by doing nothing. One of the worst sins is the sin of omission. Failing to do something we should do. So in terms of politics and economics, we don't change things by doing nothing. In fact, laissez-faire, right? Let things happen. Right? We just don't do anything. Chesterton said, God bless Chesterton, he said, if you want to conserve, use the word conservative here, if you want to conserve a gatepost, you don't leave it alone. If you want to conserve a gatepost, you have to be continually painting it. And the reason for that, of course, we live in a cosmos which is suffering from the fall. In a physical sense, that means entropy. If you leave things alone, they decay. If you want something to continue to be, you have to continue to work at restoring it and conserving it. I hate the word conservative because lots of idiots call themselves conservatives. But in the best sense of the word, that as regards the tradition, the Catholic Church, you have to conserve it. You have to do something about it. You can't leave it alone. And I finish now, just a few examples. I wrote an article, a pretty easy way of talking about this is to go to the imaginativeconservative.org. I wrote an article, I think it was published yesterday, the day before, about the craft beer movement in the United States. Now we're talking about something that's close to my heart. But prohibition, by the way, I also say to Americans, in order to be controversial, you gathered that I like being controversial. It's the only non-Muslim country in the world that's actually attempted to ban fermented distilled beverages. Now, I think you like using the word alcohol because it's an Arabic word. It defines something by its ingredient. You won't call egg protein. Right? Wine is good, it's different from ale. Ale is good, it's different from bourbon. Bourbon is good, it's different from whiskey, right? These are all good things, mark of civilization. Oscar Wilde said, by the way, Oscar Wilde said that America, sorry, now I'm getting close to being booed off stage. America is the only country in human history that passed from a period of barbarism to a period of decadence without passing through a period of civilization in between. Half of you laugh and the other half want to shoot me, which is great. But what I say is that Kentucky bourbon proves it wrong. The point is there's certain things are a mark of civilization. And certain things are a mark of barbarism. And banning alcohol, which Islam has done, for 1500 years and America tried to do for 15 years or so is a mark of barbarism. What we need to do is a small beer movement, craft beer. A few years ago, there were 2 mega breweries getting bigger and bigger, producing something which they called beer, and persuading many of us to drink, right? But there's a craft brew revolution now, and there are thousands of new breweries. The number of employees in the brewing industry has gone up 600% in the last 5 years. This is actually healthy. What we need is the same sort of thing happening throughout the whole economy. It costs, is it as cheap to buy a good IPA as to buy Bud Light? No. Is the IPA worth paying more for? Yes. Right? And people realise that. We want quality, we want craft, we want small businesses. Small businesses like small government, that's the future. We want freedom. We don't want a handful of big businesses running the economy for us. We want a multitude of small businesses where we actually know the person running it, producing quality products. Does that mean, by the way, that we need to spend more money on food than we are now? Yes. Does it mean we need to spend more money proportionately on food and drink than we do now? Yes. Does it mean to spend much less money on electronic gadgets from the Pacific Rim, produced by global corporations? Yes. We need to actually reprioritize to spend more money on things that really matter, things that life is based upon. Culture and agriculture. Right? The word agriculture, culture is based upon that. It's the roots. We want a healthy society. Spend more money on good food. Spend more money on things that matter. So, what we need to do is to actually make our government, make our society, make our community, all of which are, by the way, very bad words, make our family, and make our community based upon communion, love of God, love of neighbour. We have to make that more democratic, which means we have to just get away from Washington, D.C. as far as possible. The main reason I moved to South Carolina, by the way, is that it was the first country to declare independence from the British Empire, and the first state to declare independence from Washington, D.C. And I'm moving there in the hope it might happen again. But anyway, now we're getting very controversial. Every single day of your life, in order to be truly democratic, you need to vote. And the way that you vote is with every single dollar that you spend. Every dollar you spend is a moral act. We should actually be confessing the sins of dollars that we spend. Because the dollars that we spend are making the world unjust for our neighbours. We're committing a sin. Spending a penny is a moral act. If we can actually persuade people to change the way they live, so that every dollar that they spend is a vote, we change the world. Actually, as easy as that. God bless you.